The cafe was called Elysium and it had been around for decades. It sat on the corner of Main Street, its bright blue sign creaking in the wind. Inside, patrons would gather to enjoy a warm cup of coffee or tea while catching up with friends. However, there was something peculiar about Elysium. No matter who you were or where you came from, every time you walked through those doors, someone inside seemed to know exactly what your story was, and how it ended. The barista would greet you by name, knowing the exact circumstances of your life's conclusion. At first, people found this unsettling but also strangely comforting. They'd sit down at a table, sipping their drinks as they listened in horror or relief as others shared tales of their own final moments. But soon, curiosity got the better of them and some began to wonder, was it possible that Elysium somehow knew what lay ahead? Was this cafe somehow connected to an unknown force? One stormy evening, a young woman named Sarah stumbled into Elysium seeking refuge from the rain. As she waited in line for her drink, she noticed a familiar face across the room, herself, sitting at a table with a cup of coffee and a knowing smile on her own face. Confused but intrigued, Sarah approached the barista to ask, "How do you know what I'm going through?" The response sent shivers down her spine, "You're just getting started." And as she looked around the cafe, she realized that everyone there was waiting for their turn, and hers had only just begun. The cafe was an old-fashioned establishment with creaky wooden chairs and worn-out vinyl tables. It had been there for as long as anyone could remember, but it seemed to have appeared out of nowhere in the summer before last year's school holidays began. People would gather at the cafe during their breaks from work or school, chatting over cups of coffee and pastries. However, something strange started happening when they'd order a drink. As soon as the barista handed them their beverage, an image would appear on the cup, not just any image but one that showed what had happened to each person in their life up until that moment. Emily, who worked at a nearby bookstore, received her usual cappuccino and saw herself standing alone on stage, clutching a prize she'd won for writing. The barista handed it to her with a smile as if the image was real. Emily couldn't help but feel like someone had been watching her life unfold before their eyes. As time went by, more people came to visit the cafe and see what would happen next in their lives. Some were thrilled at seeing glimpses of success or happiness they'd yet to achieve, others felt uneasy about witnessing events that hadn't happened yet, some even saw themselves dead or failing miserably. The barista seemed oblivious to it all, taking orders with a cheerful demeanor as if the images on each cup were just part of her job description. The cafe was called Elysium and it seemed like the perfect place to spend an afternoon. It had large windows that let in plenty of natural light, comfortable chairs, and a warm atmosphere that made you feel at ease. But as I sat down at one of their tables, I noticed something strange. Every single person who walked into Elysium was sitting at a different table than the last time they came here before. Some were new to town, while others had been regulars for years. The barista told me that it changed every day, and no one knew why or how it happened. I tried to brush it off as mere coincidence, but my curiosity got the better of me. As I sipped on a cup of coffee, I started to notice strange things about each table. Some had notes scribbled in the margins with phrases like "I should have taken that job" and "don't eat the cake." Others had photographs of people who looked eerily familiar but couldn't quite place them. The tables seemed to be holding secrets, whispers from a world I didn't understand. One by one, patrons began to leave Elysium, each with an unsettling look on their face. Some were smiling, while others appeared haunted. When the last person left, I realized that my own table had changed, and so had mine. The notes now read "I should have stayed home" and a photograph of someone who looked exactly like me stared back at me from across the table. Suddenly, it dawned on me, Elysium was not just a cafe, it was a nexus for parallel universes, where every ending played out in a different reality, and I had stumbled into one that wasn't my own.